Let's turn to the war in Ukraine now. Kiev has launched a massive drone attack on Russia just hours after the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, reportedly made a previously unannounced visit to Moscow. Joining us is our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. We'll get on to the conflict bit in a second. But first and foremost, the CIA flying into Moscow. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't happened since 2021. Bill Burns, previous CIA director, went to talk to Putin directly, but this is 2021, before the full-scale invasion, so it hasn't happened for a long time. And John Ratcliffe confirmed was there. He went there for a brief visit and left again, so he was only there for a few hours. What the Kremlin have said is, oh, there he is, C-17. Yeah, what the Kremlin have said is that he met his counterpart, who would be Sergei Narishkin, who's the SVR director, so that's CIA equivalent. And Narishkin is not that close to Putin. And the Kremlin have just said a few minutes ago in a statement that Mr. Putin didn't meet him. They were playing it down earlier on. They said President Putin was informed of his visit. Well, I should think he was. You know, an American C-17 flying into Moscow and the director of the CIA getting off, I should think he was informed. But the fact that that's all they said indicates they were trying to play it down. And that's what they've done, which indicates to me that they weren't talking about prisoner swaps, or probably not Ukraine, except maybe in the periphery. I mean, if it was Ukraine, Jared Kushner would be there and Steve Witkoff. Narishkin and John Ratcliffe, I think, were probably talking about Iran, because Scott Bessent made it very clear, the Treasury Secretary, 2 days ago, that there will be no exceptions to sanctions breaking amongst other states. So he said, we, the Americans, will take secondary sanctions against you if you're breaking our sanctions to Iran. We know that the Russians are helping the Iranians all the time. And probably what the CIA director was saying to his counterpart, look, we know you do this, here's the evidence. We know you do that, here's the evidence. We know you do this. Stop doing it. We mean it when we say we will take sanctions against you. So my guess is, I'm guessing, but I think, you know, he was there for a few hours to give a warning to his counterpart that we know what you do, so stop it. That's what I think it was about.
It was a previously unannounced visit, but we do understand that the Americans gave a heads up to the Ukrainians and said if you could be ever so kind as to not strike Moscow for a few hours, that would be appreciated.
Yes, they told them not to do it. They didn't say kindly. They said don't strike Moscow or anywhere else in Russia during these few hours when our CIA directors are there. Not because they would target him, but because it would be embarrassing.
It would be embarrassing and yeah, a tricky diplomatic kind of tightrope to walk. However, that hasn't stopped Ukraine fighting on the front line, has it? And there has been some success on the ground itself.
There has, yeah. I mean, this war's moving quite fast, not just in strategic terms, with both sides taking lumps out of each other in their air campaigns, but on the ground, the Ukrainians have conducted a couple of offensives. One of them, toward the south, at Orikhiv, in that area, which is Dnipropetrovsk and Luhansk and Donetsk. They started an offensive in February, just when Elon Musk took Starlink down for the Russians, and that was really important. They conducted an offensive there with armoured warfare. We haven't seen that for a while. They found a way, which we always knew would happen at some point, of breaking through the drone wall of the Russians. It's a bit like the First World War. If you can break through the drone wall, you get a temporary respite, you get a gap that closes after a few days, and you rush through the gap, all the forces you can, and do what damage you can behind the lines. And that's what they seem to have done. And they use we know they use the 78th, 79th, the 80th, the 82nd Brigades, the 95th Air Assault Brigades. The 82nd Brigade, Air Assault Brigade, is the one with all the British equipment in it. So that was when we gave Challenger 2 tanks and some of the armoured vehicles. It's the old-fashioned armour that they used, and they made some progress. Now, that offensive ran out of steam or came to an end about 2 weeks ago, middle of August. Since then, it's occurred that in the north, you see that Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, around Lyman, just about 15 kilometres. Actually, the labels on that map are slightly misleading, but, I mean, Slavyansk is below Lyman, it's south of Lyman, about 15 kilometres. The Ukrainians have conducted another secret or fairly quiet operation with not much publicity. OPSEC, as they say, operational security, has been very tight. And they've pushed the Russians out of Nove, which is a village to the north of Lyman. What the Russians have been trying to do is a big pincer movement against Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, the two big fortress cities. They're trying to get to them from the south and come in from the north around Lyman. And what the Ukrainians have done, they've outflanked the Russians north of Lyman. and it looks as if they're trying to get in behind them. If they succeed, again, using armour, using traditional armoured weapons for the period that they're free to do it, they might have some success. So they are pushing the Russians back in specific areas. And the upshot of that, what does it mean? It means the Russians almost certainly cannot take Slavyansk and Kramatorsk this year. It'll go into the winter. It'll go into whatever happens from the spring next year.